Madam Clerk, please read.
Okay, we have an audio-visual person turning up the mic, so let's give it a moment.
Madam Clerk, please proceed with the roll call.
Commissioner Gupta,
Here.
Commissioner Hansen,
Here.
Commissioner Serrano Juan,
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez, and Chair Ketchum.
Here.
Thank you, Chair. You have a quorum.
We will now open public comment for items not on the regular agenda. Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaker slips are located near the entrance. Please hand it to clerks if you would like to speak on items not on the agenda. And at this time, Madam Chair, we don't have any speakers wishing to speak on items not on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now close public comment for items not on the agenda and on the regular agenda. And do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the minutes for February 28, 2024? I move.
I think that was a motion by Commissioner Gupta and a second by Commissioner Serrano Juan. Commissioner Gupta?
Aye.
Commissioner Hansen?
Abstain.
Commissioner Serrano Juan?
Aye.
Chair Ketchum?
Aye.
Thank you, Chair. Motion carries.
Okay, now we'll move on to the regular agenda. But first, I just want to take a moment to welcome you all and explain the order of this agenda item as we will proceed. First, staff will present and answer questions from the commissioners. Then the applicant will present and answer questions from commissioners. Next will be public comment. You will need to submit a speaker slip. Each person will have 2 minutes. Our goal, this will start with a presentation by the Mid-Coast Community Council as well, under public comment. Our goal is to hear everyone who wishes to speak. Please be respectful, no clapping or booing. If you want to show your agreement, do something just visual. And then, as far as the order of things, following public comment will be commissioner deliberation and discussion. So thank you. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Owner applicant, Mid-Penn Housing Corporation, file number PLN 2022-00220. Location, corner of Carlos and Sierra Streets, Moss Beach. Assessor's parcel number 037-022-070, and your project planner is Michael Schaller.
Good evening, Commissioners. The project before you tonight is the Cypress Point Affordable Housing Community. The project applicant is the Mid-Penn Housing Corporation. The project is located on an 11-acre parcel adjacent to the northeast corner of Carlos and Sierra Streets in the unincorporated community of Moss Beach. The project site is bounded by vacant land to the northwest towards Highway 1, residential properties along 16th Street to the north in the community of Montera, and residential properties along Carlos, Sierra, and Lincoln Streets on the other side. Thank you. The project has not significantly changed from the last time it was before you. The project is an affordable housing community composed of 71 housing units contained in 16 two-story buildings and a community building. The project will provide a mixture of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, including Americans with Disability Act accessible units. All units except the manager's apartment will be affordable to households earning up to 80% of the area median income. As part of the resident selection process, the project will reserve 75% of the units for individuals who live and or work in the Mid-Coast region. Vehicular access into the site will be provided by a single driveway on Carlos Street. One correction that I would like to point out is that plan sheet number C9 in your staff report attachments, the project originally proposed closing Carlos Street except for emergency vehicle access. That component has been removed from the project and is no longer proposed. Unfortunately, sheet C9 was not updated in time for staff report distribution. A secondary emergency access route will connect the site with Lincoln Street. There will be 142 parking spaces on site, forming a ring around the central core of the apartment buildings. Accessible walkways will provide internal pedestrian access to the site. And trails will be provided around most of the perimeter of the site for recreational use by both residents and the general public. A maximum building height of 28 feet is proposed for all buildings. What has changed from the last time this project was before the commission is the color palette and facade articulation of the proposed buildings. As discussed in the staff report, the project was reviewed by the Coastside Design Review Committee, which made several recommendations, including changing the color palette to darker tones and utilizing more articulation and secondary roof forms to break up the mass of the larger buildings. The applicant responded to these suggestions with the changes in the building designs and proposed color palette, which you can see there. Oh, next one. Thank you. As the commission may remember, the county began the preparation of an environmental impact report for this project last year, based upon the CEQA requirements in place at that time. In October of last year, Assembly Bill 1449 was signed into law by the governor and became effective at the beginning of this year. AB 1449 established a statutory exemption from CEQA for entitlements by a public agency for an affordable housing project and general plan amendments required to allow the construction of an affordable housing project. Statutory exemptions, unlike categorical exemptions, are not subject to exceptions. The sole question is whether the project fits within the language of the exemption. If the county determines that the project meets the standard required by the statutory exemption, then it must file a notice of exemption with the state and the county clerk. Planning staff has reviewed the applicability of AB 1449 to this project with county council and determined that the project meets those standards and that this statutory exemption applies to this project. As discussed in your staff report, there are a number of policies in the county's LCP that are applicable to this project. There are 5 I would like to highlight, starting with policy 2.52, which is traffic mitigation for all development in the urban mid-coast. This policy requires new development that generates a net increase in vehicle trips on Highway 1 to develop and implement a traffic impact analysis and mitigation plan. The applicant has prepared this required plan, which includes strategies to reduce trips generated by the project. The applicant will comply with CCAG's traffic demand management policy and will implement measures that will exceed the 25% trip reduction requirement. A condition has been included in attachment A that commits the applicant to the ongoing maintenance, monitoring, and implementation of these TDM measures, which include the installation of pedestrian and bicycle improvements in the area between the project site and Central Moss Beach. Policy 2.53 is the Transportation Management Plan. This policy requires the county to develop a comprehensive transportation management plan to address the cumulative impacts of residential development on roads and highways in the Mid-Coast. This is the Connect the Coastside Transportation Plan. This plan has identified feasible intersection and roadway solutions in the Moss Beach corridor that the county is currently working towards implementing. Condition number 26 in your staff report requires the applicant to contribute to the cost of constructing the circulation improvements being pursued by the county in an amount that is proportional to the project's impact on the area's roads and intersections. Additionally, the project will likely increase pedestrian traffic along Carlos Street, which has been identified as the preferred alignment for the multimodal trail. The county is committed to building this segment of the trail as soon as possible, the cost of which the applicant will be required to contribute to, as discussed in condition number 27 of your staff report. Policy 316, the phasing of development of designated housing sites. This policy limits the number of affordable housing units given building permits to 60 during any 12-month period unless the Board of Supervisors finds that this limit threatens the implementation of affordable housing on a designated site. In this instance, The applicant is requesting the board to authorize the issuance of all project-related building permits within a 12-month period because obtaining all permits will be necessary in order to secure the financing required to construct the project. Staff supports this request and has included the recommended finding in attachment A of your report. Policy 7.3 regards protection of sensitive habitats. No sensitive habitat communities were identified on the project site. Montero Creek and its associated riparian habitat lies approximately 250 feet north of the project site, separated from the site by a paved road and existing development. No development activities will occur near this portion of the project site. However, as discussed in your staff report, there is the potential for one special status plant species and the California red-legged frog to be on the site at the time of construction. Prevention measures to avoid impacting both species have been included as conditions of approval in attachment A. And then finally, policy 8.5, which is about location of development. This policy emphasizes locating development on a parcel where it is least visible from county scenic roads and least likely to significantly impact views from public viewing points. The project is designed to cluster development in the northwestern portion of the project site as far away from surrounding residences as possible. Approximately half of the site will be left undeveloped as open space. Existing trees and vegetation around the perimeter of the site and on the northwestern edge between Highway 1 and the area to be developed will not be removed and will be augmented with additional plantings to provide more screening between the development and adjacent properties and Highway 1. The proposed location of development complies with this policy. Yesterday, staff posted an addendum to tonight's staff report. We inadvertently omitted the required finding for the project's design review permit, so staff has added the recommended finding, which is here on the screen, to those already shown in attachment A. Additionally, the design review committee recommended a condition of approval pertaining to the roof line and color palettes of buildings A and E. As discussed in the addendum, staff is recommending the inclusion of this condition in attachment A. Also, staff is recommending the addition of a condition requiring the submittal of a construction management plan prior to the beginning of construction activities. The plan will include traffic control measures, designated construction access routes, and notification procedures. In closing, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the project to the Board of Supervisors by adopting the required findings and conditions of approval contained in attachment A and the supplemental memo distributed before today's hearing. If there are any questions I can answer at this time.
Thank you. Do commissioners have any questions? Do you? Do you?
No, I do.
Well, I do. Okay. The project density is 6.5 units per acre, which is at the low end of the surrounding R1 medium density residential zoning. At least one accessory dwelling unit is allowed on any R1 parcel. Last year, the county issued a total of 29 new mid-coast residential permits, which 21 were ADUs. So with that in mind, does the R1 zoning district have the potential for significantly higher density than Cypress Point?
Well, technically, yes. I mean, the density is actually a range. So
that's all I need.
Yeah, okay. Yes, so yes.
And then the question, do ADUs require off-street parking?
They are required to provide at least one uncovered off-street parking space on the property, which could be in the driveway. There is an exception mechanism that if that cannot be met at all, there's an exception mechanism that somebody could request if necessary.
Okay. So more on parking. The zoning ordinance for Cypress Point, the PUD, calls for a minimum of 142 parking spaces. It prohibits permanent parking on internal access roads, but allows temporary parking for deliveries. That's right in the zoning. Okay. If sometime in the future overflow parking becomes a problem, would it be possible to add more spaces on site?
I think they'd have to go, I mean, since the PUD zoning is reflected by the site plan, so any changes to the site plan would have to go through not a complete rezoning, but an amendment to that zoning to reflect the change in use.
So as Planner Schaller has pointed out, the development design is established in the planned unit development zoning district. So the change, any significant change to that site plan would trigger the need for an amendment. Allowing for additional spaces on site is, I think, if needed, an amendment that could be easily supported by staff if it's needed. And it may, if only minor adjustments to the site design are required, might be able to be approved administratively.
I thought at the time when I asked them to insert minimum of parking spaces that would make it simpler in the future if it were needed. But anyway, but you're saying it's still a possibility if things really go wrong, that more parking could be added.
Certainly. I think there's, just the procedural requirements and then the ability to support such a change. So there would be some procedural requirements to adjust the site plan, but if that was needed to accommodate additional parking and it didn't result in any adverse impacts, it would be supported by staff and likely approved.
Okay. So my next question is impervious surface and drainage. Does the analysis of the post-project runoff account for the remnant concrete building pads and sidewalks that are going to be removed? I mean,
no, it shouldn't. I mean, the drainage, those are going to be removed. So,
well, I'm just saying that usually when you have you develop a site, if there's already development there, aren't those foundations existing development that's going to be removed? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to
yeah, I mean, yes, that is existing condition. I guess I'm not quite following the question.
Well, normally if you add on, and if you increase the density, or if you increase the impervious surfaces, then you have to retain that water on that extra.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering if in the calculations for increased impervious surfaces, if you subtract first the foundations that you take away.
I don't believe that's how they would have done. I mean, okay. It would have just been, this is what we're proposing, not, what.
Or forget about that other stuff.
Yeah, because it's going to be removed from the site.
All right, I just was curious. Well, okay. I had brought this up before, my concern about the proposed bike share roads on the steep block of California Avenue between Stetson and Etheldor. The Class 3 bikeway concept comes from the 2021 Countywide Active Transportation Plan. What I would like to know, and I don't need answers tonight, but what is the road grade on that block, and how does it compare with recommended standards for bike routes? And so before requiring the implementation of this condition of approval, I would just urge the planning department to take a closer look at this. It just felt like when the ATP came through, that it seemed like its purpose was to do some project on the bay side, and then the attention over here was cursory, and it didn't feel like there was anybody from Moss Beach having input on that at the time. So, I mean, since it's a condition of approval, I just would, and you're imposing it, I would urge you to look at those calculations first, or drive up and ride a bike up and down and see how you feel about it. Okay.
Understood. We will do that, and I've walked it myself, and I understand your perspective.
Walking's okay, but it's the bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need some gears.
Especially considering there's going to be a stop sign at the bottom of that steep hill. I guess the other thing, I don't know if to bring up it or not, it's about this addition and the addendum about the haul routes for the trucks. And I brought it up because in the draft EIR, they had a section there about, when I see haul trucks, I'm thinking of when they're hauling away the concrete or hauling in new soil, the heavy trucks.
Yes.
That in the draft EIR, it said that those trucks will be routed, specifically it said, from the north end of Carlo Street and into the site right there. In other words, they wouldn't be driving on any of the small neighborhood streets. And that was what I was asking for, really. And in the wording, it sort of says, well, we need a whole plan. We need to see what you're doing. We need to watch where you're driving. And it's like, I don't understand why there would be a need to drive heavy trucks through the residential streets. And then the one other thing too, construction site access in general, it seemed, I would like it limited to Carlos Street, specifically not Lincoln. I just don't see how these streets that were never put into the county road system are not maintained by the county, and if whatever development they have was done by the property owners there, I don't see how you can justify using that. I mean, it's one thing to have an emergency access point on Lincoln, it's only ever used with fire truck or something, than to open that to construction. I'm just concerned.
So the wording in the condition does specify specifically Carlos Street as the access point for all construction. It does acknowledge, though, there might need to be some minor work done for the secondary access road, that when they have to do some grading and some minor putting the gravel down and that
Lincoln
work
Street.
on Lincoln that they might need to access. Since I don't, but that would be for just that one specific segment of the work that they need to do.
Yeah, the thing is, to get there, you got to drive through a whole bunch
Right.
of other streets that are not in the county road system.
I understand that, but but the condition does specifically state that access for construction equipment and the construction materials should come from has to come from Carlos Street.
All right, well, this plan that they have to develop to monitor all this stuff, I hope you understand where I was coming from on this.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's all I have. So, thank you.
Okay.
Does the applicant wish to speak? They have 15 minutes. Ooh, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Ketchum and Planning Commissioners. My name is Serena Ip. I'm a project manager with Mid-Penn Housing. First, I want to thank you all for having us this evening. I also want to thank the staff for all of their work leading up to this request. Next slide, please. For those who may be unfamiliar with Mid-Penn Housing, we are a nonprofit affordable housing developer and long-term owner. We are deeply rooted in San Mateo County with our headquarters in Foster City. We have about 30 communities throughout the county, which accounts for about 2,000 residents. We serve working families, veterans, farm worker families, seniors, and those with special needs. We have in-house property management. So our property management team maintains our portfolio of over 120 communities, which serves just about 20,000 residents. And this team is responsible for making sure our properties are maintained and beautiful inside and out, as well as that we're in compliance with all of our affordability regulations. Our communities also have an on-site manager's unit to support our residents. We also have a resident services team that provides free on-site programming to support our residents. It's tailored to the specific needs of the population at that specific community. So for example, Cypress Point would be serving working families as well as farm worker families. So the programming would be an after-school program Monday through Friday for school-aged children, supporting their academic growth. We would have classes and workshops for workforce development and support for those who speak English as a second language. So we're proposing a project that aims to meet the needs on the coast side. Current data shows that there are nearly 1,500 jobs on the coast side, with over half of those paying less than $40,000 annually. The major job sector in this area is in accommodation and food services, and we've talked to a lot of business owners, the school district, and other local agencies, and I've understood that an ongoing issue for them is employee retention and the ability for their employees to find safe, non-crowded, affordable housing. So there is no deed-restricted housing on the Mid-Coast. And we also know from the county's 2016 report on the agricultural workforce housing needs assessment that there are nearly 1,200 affordable units that are needed for our agricultural workers. Our response to that is our proposal will have a live-work preference for 75% of our units for coastside, for those who live and or work on the coast side, and the remaining 25% will be reserved for agricultural workers and their families. This slide here just shows the range we're proposing here. So we have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartment homes, the majority being 1s and 2s. We're also proposing a range of affordability to meet the existing needs of the community. So while all of the units will be restricted to 80% area median income or below, but we're actually proposing restricting all to 60% area median income and below, and the majority, about 70% of those units, we're actually proposing at 50% AMI and below. So overall, we're trying to deepen the targeting, the affordability here, because of the residents that we know qualify on the coast side. And income qualified residents will pay about 30% of their household income to rent. A little history on the project site. So that top graphic is actually the previously approved PUD for the site. As Mike mentioned, this is an 11-acre infill site, and it's included in the county's housing element. It was also included in the local coastal program as a priority development site for affordable housing, which reserved infrastructure for the site. The previously approved PUD had 148 units, and just a portion of that was for low-income housing. I believe it was 21%. So we requested to rezone the site to increase the affordability to 100% for low income, and then change the density to medium from medium-high to match the adjacent neighborhood. That request was certified by the Coastal Commission in 2021. We've been working on this project for a really long time. We entered the option agreement in 2015 and then spent about 2 years trying to talk to as many people as we could in the community. We held a series of open houses, a pre-application meeting, we presented to the Mid-Coast Community Council, and we did a lot of door knocking with the businesses. That all informed our initial proposal. And actually, when we first went out, we didn't have a conceptual proposal. We wanted to hear what folks, how they use the site currently and what they thought about the site. And then we went ahead and did the LCP amendment, understanding that folks were not happy about the 148 unit designation. Again, that was certified by the Coastal Commission in 2021, and then following that, we submitted the CDP application that's before you tonight. Also in 2022, we applied for financing from the state, and we were awarded almost $18 million for the project from the State Housing and Community Development Department. Most recently, we went through the design review process and got a conditional recommendation of approval from the Coastside Design Review Committee. So throughout the project's history, we've really tried to make, and we've made many adjustments to the plan. Sorry, it's a little bit faded here, but as you've heard, we drastically reduced the number of units. We increased the parking ratio to 2 to 1. There's a total of 142 parking spaces proposed. That is beyond what the county requires. We proposed walking trails open to the community because we heard that that's how they like to use the site informally now. We've maximized the buffer space all around. When I was here in 2020 in front of the Planning Commission, we talked a lot about the setbacks. We understand that the setbacks and the screening help eliminate light, noise, all of that. So we feel pretty good about all the green space, and half of the site is undeveloped. We also have a maximum height of 28 feet for our buildings. And responding to community comments, we do have site access proposed as one main driveway off Carlos, away from the neighborhood streets. We also heard at the last Planning Commission meeting in September the desire to keep Carlos Street and Highway 1 open, And we're very happy to contribute to a fair share contribution to fund these improvements led by the county. That was it for me. I want to keep it brief and get to your questions. The Mid-Penn project team is here along with our architect and landscape architect in case you have any questions for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do commissioners have questions for you? Start with you.
I had there's a lot of concern about this artificial turf. What was the rationale behind artificial turf on the property?
You know, we do have a specific turf that we use now that is one of the best products we can use environmentally wise that we've looked into. We don't know what's available at the time we built the project, but we can, I think, easily change that out. I'm a little hesitant because I don't know which products are available to us. We also have formerly used like rubber tiles, and I think that's something we could easily look at. And we're interested in the health of our residents in the community as well. So certainly that's something we flagged with our architect team and have been discussing.
So you never considered regular grass there?
Grass is really hard to maintain underneath playground equipment, so I don't think we've done grass, but we've done the rubber tiles, which
so this is only under the playground areas?
Yeah, it's just under the playground equipment.
Okay. Thank you. The other question I had is, what is the duration of your construction going to be?
It's estimated for 20 months, 18 to 20 months.
20 months.
Mm-hmm.
And all the units will be built at the same time? Or?
Yes, we need the units built at the same time to finance it.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Good evening. I noticed your projections that most of the people, a good portion of the people will be farm laborers, food service, and other services. So I presume that the commute hour for these people is outside the normal range of the commute hours. I've had a farm in Half Moon Bay. We started very early in the morning,
Right.
not the normal commute hours. So a good portion of the people, is it safe to assume that a good portion of the people who be using motor vehicles is outside the normal range of the standard, quote, commute hour?
That's hard to say, but there is 25% of the units will be filled by the agricultural workers, and that includes folks working at the nurseries, of course. But I think you're right that they all tend to start before the peak traffic hours.
Right, or if you're in food service afterwards.
Food service hours, right, lunchtime and dinner time.
Yeah. Okay. But that's who you're targeting.
We would be marketing along the coastside for these properties and working with local service providers and agencies that can market.
That's my only question.
Thank you.
I don't know, I'm not sure if you're gonna go through this a little bit later, but my main concern is the traffic safety going in and out of the site and emergency vehicles. Is that something you all are concerned with now or maybe in the future?
Well, we've been having a lot of conversations with the county and the fire department. You may know we previously proposed turning that into an emergency vehicle only lane, but the feedback from the agencies was they would prefer not to do that, and they didn't think that there would be an impact coming out. This fire station is located right across the street.
Just wanted to test that. If there's any future concern, I know the fire station's right there because I went to visit it as well. So, but I have a little concern about it.
Could you speak to the microphone?
I just have a lot of concern over the narrowness of the streets there. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And you mean south of the site or
South of the
going
site.
out into Highway 1?
Correct.
South of the site.
That's all I have.
I live at Pillar Ridge, and when I was organizing there about 20 years ago, I visited the Moonridge site, and was just taken with your community center and the computer room, which was filled with. It seemed as though all you had to do was provide the rooms, and the services came. Now, are there computers in your computer room?
Yeah, that's an interesting one
They
for
were
me.
giving classes there at the
Yes.
time. I don't know, is that still done?
Our awesome resident service team does do things like that. I have actually heard the preference now, and schools prefer iPads. So,
Oh,
yeah.
well, there you are.
Yeah.
That was 20 years ago.
Right, but there will definitely be
Okay.
some sort of, and it depends on the population. We find our senior properties, they still really like the computer labs, and having a printer is actually really helpful for folks, because you don't print that much, and to maintain it, the cost. So it really just depends on the population.
Also the bookmobile, the Half Moon Bay Library, the bookmobile was gone since the pandemic. They're back now, and they come to Pillar Ridge. I'm sure they would come to you if you just, hey, we're here,
Right,
That's
there's a lot of
nice.
good partnerships on the
Nice
coast.
service too. But that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, commissioners, for your questions. We will now open public comment for this item. The Mid-Coast Community Council will be giving a presentation first, and you need to turn in your speakers. Oh, here we go. You run
I'll
this.
just stand up. Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, I will first call on MCC to speak, but as a reminder, speaker slips are located near the front, and if you would like to speak, we ask you that you submit your speaker slips now to one of us up in the front here, and you will have, MCC will have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Hope you can hear me okay. Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. We appreciate it. There are a lot of housing advocates from outside of the coast that use the same form letter to make comments and will probably speak tonight. I represent the Mid-Coast Community Council, an elected council that represents the residents of the Mid-Coast who overwhelmingly do not support the development due to the health and safety risks it presents the entire community. Wanting affordable housing and making sure that the site does not present a health and safety risk to the new residents and surrounding community should be a priority for the Planning Committee. Unfortunately, Cypress Point presents health and safety risks that cannot be mitigated. This has been established in MidPenn's own draft EIR and is in a slide I will speak to in a minute. The first slide here shows the entire downtown of Moss Beach. Note, there is no traffic light for ingress or egress of Highway 1. There is no supermarket, no community center, no pharmacy, no library, no health clinic, no school within 1 mile, and no major transit center. These are all requirements for AB 1449 to exempt affordable housing from CEQA. That exemption does not apply to Cypress Point as it fails to meet amenity requirements. Power outages in Moss Beach are frequent during storms and often last for a week at a time. I personally lost power just last week and there was no storm. Many residents rely on landlines for emergencies because cell service becomes inoperable. AT&T is trying to discontinue landline service. It is so serious that Supervisor Mueller is working on this issue right now. This is just one of many health and safety risks Moss Beach residents face. Slide 2, please. Seton Coastside has closed its emergency room, leaving Moss Beach without health care. There is no urgent care on the coast. Sick patients must go over the hill for care. If there is a health emergency, the paramedic on staff at Fire Station 44, which is in the neighborhood adjacent to Cypress Point, will need to respond immediately to triage the patient or patients prior to the arrival of the contracted ambulance in another location. Then the patient has to be transported at least 40 or more minutes away to hospitals over the hill. Slide 2 shows the difficulty the fire company has turning from California Avenue onto Stetson Street in Moss Beach at the current time. Because Cypress Point will send cars towards California Ave, Side streets and California Avenue will fill with cars, making turns even more difficult. Additional traffic will exacerbate the problem and increase response times. This can be the difference between life and death for residents and visitors to the Mid-Coast. Slide 3, please. This is the view from Stetson and California Avenue, where the draft EIR suggests Cypress Point residents can walk to the bus stop. Clearly, the hill is too steep and inaccessible for most. This is not a safe option. Mid-Coast residents are well aware of these hazards, and I hope you can now see for yourselves what residents have been speaking about for years. Slide 4, please. This is the route most residents will have to try to walk to access downtown Moss Beach to get to the post office, bus stop, and public park. You can see how narrow the street is, and there is no room to safely walk. Can you imagine children trying to walk to the park on this road while cars are leaving the development, as the EIR suggests? There is no safe way to walk to school that is in Montara, and no school bus available, requiring parents to drive their children to school. Currently, there is a dirt path next to a very large ravine. 16th Street that crosses the dirt path is in an earthquake liquefaction zone. The multimodal trails that you've been hearing about are not funded. They are merely being studied at this time. Slide 5, please. This is Kelmore Street, an alternative route for the fire station. Clearly, there is insufficient room for two-way traffic with cars parked on just one side of the road. 6, please. Sorry. This is the current overflow parking at Mid-Penn's Moonridge Apartments. What will happen to fire response and evacuation of the local residents if this happens in Moss Beach on a road half the width of this? How will Mid-Penn keep this from happening in the surrounding neighborhood when they can't control the parking at Moonridge? Slide 7, please. This slide is from the draft EIR showing that Alternative 4, moving to another location, would, and I quote, be the environmentally superior alternative. Alternative 4, I'll let that pass, would lessen the significant traffic impacts related to pedestrian safety. It is clear from Mid-Penn's own EIR that another location would be more suitable. An alternative that has not been studied is to have senior living and assisted living community at this site that can be self-contained. There is no such housing available like this, and according to the census data, the majority of Moss Beach residents living below the poverty line are ages 65 and older. This type of housing would provide a healthy, aging alternative for seniors who often face loneliness and lack of nutrient-rich diet, all while meeting RHNA numbers. A proclamation was made by the Board of Supervisors to fight loneliness, the first of its kind. And finally, slide 8. These are a list of prerequisites that the Mid-Coast Community Council have identified as needing to be met prior to any development at this site. At this time, not a single one of these has been met. Therefore, we urge the Planning Commission to deny all permits at this time until these can be met. 1, traffic and mobility mitigations for safe access to and from the project should be added before the project is built, given that the cost of these mitigations will go up significantly once the project is completed and fully populated. These mitigations include a multi-use trail for safe pedestrian and bicyclist use, mitigation measures to make site distance safe at Carlos Street's northern intersection with Highway 1, expanded ingress and egress to Moss Beach from Highway 1, a nearby safe pedestrian crossing of Highway 1, a safe path north of the project entrance to Montara, and implementation of a safe walking route to Monteras Elementary School, direct access to Sierra Stetson for fire emergency. San Mateo County should assume responsibility for maintenance of all roads surrounding the development. Add sufficient parking to preclude on-street parking by Cypress Point residents. Add spaces for delivery parking, especially given that there are no services in the area. The CFPD certification that the project has adequate firefighting water storage. County to waive any water charges to Montero Water and Sewer District for use of airport wells. Requires stormwater management sufficient to handle the current level of mid-coast storms, which annually exceed the outdated 100-year storm metrics, including uphill acres, which currently drain to the project site. Adequate protection for Montero Creek and the Fitzgerald Marine Reserves from toxins and overflows during storms consistent with current and future weather patterns. Lighting plan should be dark sky international and wildlife-friendly compliant. Eliminate synthetic turf due to evidence of adverse effects on human health and the environment. These are all things that the community has spoken to us and would like to see included. We appreciate your, sorry, now I can see a little better this way. We really do appreciate you taking this into consideration because this is a real safety matter. This is not just about the residents living here, but the community as well. And we need everyone to have a safe environment. So thank you very much for your consideration.
May we please have no applause, no boos, just quiet. Also if you agree with something that somebody's already said when you speak, you could say, I agree with so-and-so. There's no need to repeat it again. Thank you.
Thank you. And as Chair Ketchum noted, speakers will have 2 minutes. At this time, staff has 33 speakers slipped. I will call on Matt Regan, followed by Bruce McKimmey.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Matt Regan. I am one of those out-of-town professional housing advocates just mentioned. I hope my letter is a little better than a standard form letter. I wrote it myself, didn't copy it from anyone. I'm here representing the Bay Area Council. We are an employer-sponsored public policy advocacy organization. We represent about 350 of the largest employers in the Bay Area. I manage our housing advocacy work. I drove an hour and a half to get here tonight. I live in Contra Costa County, and I will drive an hour and a half to get home when we're finished. Why would I do that, you ask yourselves? Well, some would say that I'm a shill for billionaire developers. Not the case. This is a nonprofit developer. This is not a 1,000-unit mega project that impacts the overall Bay Area economy. This is a smaller 71-unit project. So why am I here? This is a symbolic project. Every community in this region has an obligation to house its workforce, even the most affluent, especially the most affluent communities. This is an affluent community, but it has workforce needs. The people who teach the children, who work in the hotels, serve in the restaurants, and in the fields. This community has no deed-restricted affordable housing. It is critical that this project not only be built, but sends a message to the region that this is a caring community that cares for its workforce, that it is not exclusionary, that it is a place where everybody who works here has a place to call home here. Thank you. We hope you get a yes vote tonight.
Thank you. I'll call on Bruce McKimmey, followed by Joanne Rokowski.
Good evening. Bruce McKimmey, Moss Beach. The gentleman before me spoke. He drove an hour and a half to get here. This project will not affect him or his family. Let's talk infrastructure. First, roadway and highway. The streets of Moss Beach cannot handle any more traffic, and the highway certainly cannot. Mornings are bumper to bumper all the way to town and over 92. The afternoons are the same, horrible gridlock. And the weekends, forget about it. Can you imagine 200 cars backed up California Street trying to get on the highway going north or south? The same with Ecuador, the same with Carlos. The Mid-Penn treats mitigation like a magic wand. It just won't work. Let's talk water. Number one, in order to build the 72 units, the water company needs 1,500 gallons a minute for 4 hours. It's not there. Let's talk sewer. In the winter, the heavy rain in the sewer plant cannot handle the water, so it spills over and drains to the ocean. This project will add more sewage. There is no mass transit, no jobs, no shopping, and to walk to school, you have to walk along the highway. Not safe. Years ago, they wanted to close Fairland View to lack of students. Now the school district is wasting money up there trying to keep it open. in case this project gets built. The project, or the school is too far away. It's 1.4 miles, not 1. Years ago, Mid-Penn meetings held at Fairlawn View about this project, and a man who worked for Mid-Penn was Felix. He stated that this location was the worst that they ever looked at. This project is the worst. To build this project in this location is wrong, just plain wrong. Thank you.
Joanne Rakowski, followed by Walt Von Hoffy. Please hold your applause. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Rakowski, and I'm a resident of the Coast Side. I'm here this evening to speak in support of the planned development by Mid-Penn Housing at Cypress Point. Over the last few years, I've listened to stories of the incredible challenges low and very low income residents of the Coast Side have in paying rent or in finding housing at all. Families in Half Moon Bay, for example, double or even triple up and have to take turns to cook a meal in the kitchen or to use the single bathroom. The estimated need for housing in the Half Moon Bay area exceeds 1,000 units. So without sufficient housing, low income and very low income individuals and families will be forced to leave our area. And yet, by growing our food, staffing our stores and restaurants, and teaching our children and our grandchildren, these individuals and families hugely contribute to the life of so many of us appreciate. I have much respect for Mid-Penn as a responsible builder and property manager. For years, I have tutored elementary school children at Moonridge as part of a program and have seen firsthand the ways Mid-Penn supports its residents. One of the alternatives to building the 71 units proposed for Cypress Point is to put the housing elsewhere, for example, in El Granada. Well, I live in El Granada, and I say yes, please build low-income housing in El Granada, but do so in addition to building the project at Cypress Point. We need this project on the Coast Side and so many more. Please approve this plan. Thank you.
Walt Von Hoffy, followed by Jenny Scabel. And please hold your applause. Jenny Scabel.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jenny Scobel. I'm a homeowner in El Granada. I urge the Planning Commission to approve the entitlements for the Cypress Point project. I strongly support it. As a member of the San Mateo Housing and Community Development Committee, I'm quite familiar with Mid-Penn's record as a housing developer, and it's excellent. As was vividly illustrated by the living conditions that were discovered at the mushroom farm when last year's shooting took place, low-income workers are forced to live in deplorable conditions. Whether they are farm workers, restaurant workers, childcare workers, landscapers, they need a decent place to live. The opposition frequently talks about this being a terrible place. The reality is there is no perfect place. The workers who will live there work between Montera and well beyond Pescadero. So there is no perfect place. All the numerous objections can be addressed and shouldn't in any way prevent the project from going forward. Thank you.
Nancy Marsh, followed by Dolores Silva.
Hi, Chair Ketchum and Council. My name is Nancy Marsh. I also live in El Granada. I'm going to agree with a lot of Joanne Rakowski's comments, but maybe put some numbers to them. I work with a local, I'm on the board of a local social service agency. I'm not here speaking on their behalf. I'm speaking as an individual, but I just wanted to add
some numbers, to the numbers of people who are living in congregate housing, whose kids are doing their homework on the floor of the one room they live in that they share with 3 or 4 other families. My agency provided food and housing security services to about 4,000 co-siders last year, which is about 15% of the co-side. So when we talk about the population, I can imagine this project or any project, one in El Granada or elsewhere or wherever we can build them, being filled by our current neighbors, current co-siders, people currently serving us in restaurants, cleaning our homes, and working in our gardens. The need, I understand that the traffic and the safety issues are real. The problem is also real, and we have to find the right balance so that we can solve both of them, because the quality of life for those of us who can afford to live on the coast depends on these people. And if they have to keep moving, we won't have the services that we need on the coast. So somehow we have to find a way to get over the speed humps and get this problem solved for all of our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. I will actually call now on a Spanish speaker, and that is Rocío Ávila, y después Carolina Carvajal. Rocío?
Voy a hacerlo corto y después lo digo y después lo dejo después. Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Rocío Ávila.
Good afternoon, my name is Rocío Ávila.
Y soy miembro del Comité de Viviendas Justas de Alas.
And I belong to ALAS.
Vengo en representación de mi comunidad y de aquellas personas que necesitan una vivienda digna para vivir.
I am coming to represent my community and to those people who need affordable housing to live.
Nuestra comunidad que vive y trabaja como trabajadores agrícolas y trabajadores esenciales.
Our community, which live and work like agricultural workers and essential workers,
hemos pedido por muchos años viviendas justas aquí en la costa.
We have asked for many years for affordable housing here in our area, in the coast, in the county of San Mateo.
La necesidad de tener un hogar ha hecho que muchas familias tengan que mudarse a otro lugar.
The necessity to have a home has made many families leave our place.
La razón es porque nunca han dejado construir viviendas aquí.
The reason is because you've never allowed construction here.
Siempre hay personas en contra de los proyectos para construir.
There are always people who are against this construction.
Siempre dicen que el problema del tráfico, el medio ambiente.
They're always saying that it's problem with the traffic or the environment.
Que el lugar no cumple los requisitos para la construcción.
Or that we are not meeting construction requirements.
Que hay animales en peligro de extinción y que las calles son angostas.
Or that the animals are in danger of becoming extinct and that the streets are too narrow.
Y que han dicho que no quieren que viva gente pobre cerca de sus casas.
And they have said that they don't want poor people living in their community or near their homes.
Porque sus casas bajarán de valor.
Because their houses are going to lower in cost.
También nosotros tenemos derecho a una vivienda justa y digna para nuestras familias.
We also have the right to live in a community and in our homes that are affordable.
Para nuestros hijos que necesitan un espacio para vivir.
Our children need a decent place to live.
Tal vez muchas personas no les importa o no lo saben.
Maybe there are many people who don't care or they just don't know.
Porque nunca han vivido en las condiciones que nosotros hemos vivido.
Because they have never lived how we have lived.
tener que vivir con otras familias y compartir un cuarto con todos nuestros hijos.
To live with other families and our children in a room.
Pero nosotros que tenemos y estamos viviendo en estas situaciones,
But it's us who are living in these situations and conditions.
pedimos la construcción de más viviendas asequibles que podamos pagar de acuerdo a nuestros ingresos.
We ask for the construction of this affordable housing so that we can afford to pay with our wages.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
I will now call on Carolina Carvajal, followed by Dolores Silva. Ahora vamos a llamar a Carolina Carvajal.
Sí.
Muy buenas tardes.
Muy buenas tardes a todos.
Good evening, everyone.
Creo que es triste ver la situación en este momento,
I believe it is very sad to see at this moment
que las personas que realmente necesitan viviendas en este momento no se encuentran aquí.
that the people who actually need this housing are not present.
Y que las personas que realmente necesitan las viviendas no puedan opinar tampoco.
And the people who need this housing cannot give their opinion.
Porque tal parece que las personas que poseen más clase social son los únicos que pueden decidir por los demás.
Because it seems like only those people who are in a social class will speak for everyone else.
Estamos hablando que nuestro pueblo de la costa necesita más de 1,000 hogares en este momento.
We are talking about our community who needs more than 1,000 homes in our community.
Y las personas que poseen dinero dicen que no, porque como ellos poseen sus propias viviendas,
And the people who are saying no, well, they own their homes.
ellos no tienen necesidad.
They don't have a necessity.
Hablan de tráfico,
They talk about traffic,
de sobrepoblación.
that we are overpopulated.
Lamentablemente eso ya existe aquí.
The truth is that already exists here.
Las personas en Half Moon Bay y toda la costa
In the people in Half Moon Bay and all of the coast.
viven hacinados juntos,
They all live together
porque no se puede pagar la renta.
because we can't pay the rent.
La renta aquí es extremadamente exagerada.
The rent here is incredibly high.
Tal parece que queremos hacer un pueblo de la costa de gente rica.
Looks like we want to be a coast for the rich.
Las personas pobres tienen que compartir viviendas porque no pueden pagarlo.
The lower income families have to rent.
Hablan de que no habrá espacio para salir.
Talk about they will not be able to go out.
Estas personas
These people,
somos las que trabajamos por ustedes.
we are the ones who work for you.
Y cuando ustedes necesiten de nosotros
And
y
when you need from us
lleguen a mayores,
and get older,
nosotros cuidaremos de ustedes.
we are the ones who are going to take care of you.
Y si no soy yo, serán mis
And if
hijos.
it's not me, it's going to be my children.
Porque la gente pobre
Because us poor people
hacemos los trabajos
do the work
que la gente con dinero
that the rich people
no lo quiere hacer.
don't want to do.
Por favor, construyamos más
Thank
casas.
you. Please
Gracias.
construct more houses.
Thank you. I will now call on Dolores Silva, followed by Greg Dieguez.
Hello, I'm Dolores Silva, and I've lived here for over 33 years in Moss Beach, and I have a lot of sympathy and empathy. Yo también soy latina. Yo también crecí en un pueblo chico y con poco dinero. I too grew up in a poor neighborhood in Texas. I know what it's like, maybe not to the extreme that we have now in these days, because it wasn't like that when I was young, which was a long time ago. But believe me, we have a lot of compassion. We stand in support of adding affordable housing, and we're keenly aware of the pressure to build more as soon as possible. But right now, we're dealing with the evidence behind public safety and environmental concerns. I will not go and repeat what I thought that the MCC did an excellent job. I have great sympathy for the situation for our workers. I am embarrassed to say that our wage structure and our resources have not taken better care of our farm workers, and for pretty much all of our industry here is low wage paying. You say that we are a rich neighborhood? Not really. We're probably lower income than just over the hill, and our rents are actually lower than over the hill. But whatever it is, we certainly lack housing, and we also are very uncomfortable with what's been presented in this staff report to say that public safety will be taken care of. We rely on the county for public safety, and we rely on the county for adhering to the LCP. And we're hoping that the Planning Commission will consider the conditions of approval as presented here, and maybe they're a bit negligent in meeting the county's responsibilities. And we urge you to recognize the shortcoming. And please, have evidence for when you say these measures will help, because we don't see the evidence. We just see conjecture, and maybe someday things will get better. Thank you.
Greg Dieguez, followed by Eric DeBode.
Commissioners, Steve, Tim, good to see you. Let me point to a problem that the Planning Commission can fix. We're in the rainiest spot in the county. As was pointed out by a California state geologist, no geologist signed the draft EIR report in spite of the fact that the scope of the work required that expertise. 2 geotech engineers did sign. I'm told that oversight would never have been allowed in other counties. This parcel is in a landslide zone, next to a liquefaction zone, and bisected by a dormant earthquake fault. The project proposes to pave over a large portion of an essential retention pond, which pools and holds water from a dozen uphill acres, providing a time release mechanism. Even with that buffer, Highway 1 had 3 debris flows during the New Year's Eve storm of 22-23, blocking half of our only evacuation and emergency response road. The county states that this project will be designed for 25-year storms, which are defined by statistics which include 20th century rainfall data. Let me read from the Montero Water and Sanitary District application to FEMA on August 2022. Quote, "These high-intensity rain events used to be considered 20 or even 100-year events, but they have happened 5 times within the last approximately 5 years, with 3 significant events this year alone. And that was written 4 months before the New Year's Eve storm. The SAM overflow report released just this week contained this reference, making it the second wettest day in the area since records began in 1849. That's 174 years. It is possible to build stormwater management systems that handle these large storms. The Ocean Colony and Pillar Ridge neighborhoods have done so and maintained them. The county and Mid-Penn's Moonridge project have proven they cannot. We cannot repeat that mistake here. The property's stormwater system must be designed to handle the so-called 100-year storms, because those are the storms we already have annually. And this is not an academic issue I'm bringing up. One resident who was flooded out of her home on Stetson and is still living in a rental while repairs are made can attest to that. Thank you.
Eric DeBode, followed by Ed Love.
Good evening, commissioners and Coastside community. Thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts. My name is Eric DeBode. I'm the executive director of the Abundant Grace Coastside Worker, and I live here on the coastside. This project helps our coastside community get a little closer to meeting the need for affordable housing units. 5 years ago, Abundant Grace commissioned a survey of over 250 Spanish language speakers on the coast side, and this is what we learned. 50% are doubled, tripled, or quadrupled in housing. 75% work here on the coast side. 35% have had the same job for 10 years or longer. 65% earn less than $50,000 per year, and of that number, 50% of that number earns less than $25,000 a year. 67% have lived here 15 years or longer. I support this affordable housing project and urge you to pass it because it is desperately needed, and it will largely benefit families who are long-term, stable, hardworking, and who form the backbone of our agricultural, hospitality, and restaurant industries on the coast side. Thank you very much.
Ed Love, followed by Hien Mi Kim.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ed Love, and I live in Moss Beach, not far from the project. Previous speakers have mentioned all the different people who service the farm workers, the landscapers who landscape our property and maintain it, and construction workers who build our homes and remodel them, the house cleaners who keep them clean, the restaurant workers who treat us when we go out to eat in the restaurants here on the coast, and the teachers who teach our kids and our grandchildren, and caretakers who will take care of us in our golden years. Most of us here on the coast, the value of our homes increases every year. There's many of us who, on paper and equity in our homes, have become millionaires. And this puts further out of reach housing for the people who do service. So I strongly recommend and request that the you commissioners approve this project. I think the county staff has done a great job as an architect. I've looked at the plans, and it's a very difficult project, has lots of constraints, but the planners at the county and Mid-Penn and the architects have done a very good job with all of these constraints. And the people that will move into this project will be very happy and service even better than they do now. Thank you.
Hien Mi Kim, followed by Suzanne Moore.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Hien Mi Kim, and I am the Director of Community Engagement and Public Policy at Puente de la Costa Sur, a community-based organization located in Pescadero, California. As a policy advocate working directly with farm workers in the South Coast communities, I would like to express my very strong support for the Cypress Point Affordable Housing Project in Moss Beach. According to the San Mateo County 2023 Affordable Housing Needs Report published by California Housing Partnership, 78% of extremely low-income households in San Mateo County are paying more than 50% of their income on housing costs, compared to 5% of moderate-income households. In 2022, there were only 1,625 beds available in the interim and permanent housing supply for persons experiencing homelessness. Furthermore, our Chinese and Latino immigrant farm workers in our communities continue to live in severely overcrowded and unsafe conditions. Sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 more family members all living in the one single room together. Just imagine that. Isn't that an issue of public health and safety? Without adequate housing, farm workers and their families are left with no choice but to live and sleep in their vehicles, having to build a life where there's little to no separation between their work life and their professional and personal life, since their landlord is also their employer. Just think about that. The person that you pay your rent to is also your employer. Not having a roof over one's head itself is a bigger safety and health issue than traffic congestions. We commend the Mid-Penn Housing for putting aside 18 units out of the total 71 units in Cypress Point for our local farm workers who deserve access to affordable and safe housing in our communities. Thank you.
Suzanne Moore, followed by Poppy Krasnov.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. Suzanne Moore, coastal resident from Pacifica. I support Mid-Penn's project, Cypress Point. Below market rate housing is desperately needed on the coast for our essential workers, young families, elders, the disabled, and neighbors on a fixed income. I also support monies for necessary upgrades of infrastructure and a coastal public transit corridor. Delays only increase costs, and our community needs for updated infrastructure, housing at all levels of affordability, transportation, safety, and preparation for climate change. All of those are imperative. If our goal is to create resilient communities for future generations, then we must aggressively seek funding and plan together for a space of vibrancy, resiliency, and inclusivity. The future is upon us. Thank you.
Poppy Krasnov, followed by Chris Tyler.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this with all of you. I am a Coastside resident. I also recently got certified as a Coastside Community Emergency Response Team. When I learned the constraints of the traffic we already have, the one in, the one out, and the fact that the existing residents are in danger if and when something will happen. I have lived myself below the poverty line. I've grown up in a studio, and I lived in a studio till I was 16 with my entire family. There's no doubt that we need affordable housing, but the term is affordable and safe housing. And this specific location, I will not quote everyone who'd already spoken to the dangers, the environmental, the logistical, the safety dangers that this location would present. I would also like to quote one of the oldest American environmental organizations, the Sierra Club, who have previously supported Mid-Penn's numerous projects, worthy projects. Sierra Club has gone out and saw the site at Moss Beach, the proposed site, and this is a direct quote. There could hardly be a much worse location for affordable housing in the urbanized Mid-Coast. The location inefficiency will add not only transportation as a cost burden on affordable residents already struggling with inadequacy at our wage regimes. There's no amount of compassion I have for not being able to find a place to live, but this specific place would endanger the potential residents. There's absolutely no shoulder to get in and out on Highway 1. I am a cyclist myself, and I would also like to point out that this would present immeasurable dangers to anyone who would like to travel the coast, our visitors included. Thank you.
Chris Tyler, followed by James Larimer.
Hello, commissioners, and thank you for coming to the coast side. I'm Chris Tyler. I'm a 30-year resident of the coast side. And as such, I've lived through a number of developments out here. I've lived here before and after the tunnel was built. I've lived here before and after the 92 improvements, and before and after, let me just hold it. And before and after the sewer and water moratoriums were expanded and lifted. Many who have already spoken have spoken much more eloquently than I can, so I'm going to speak primarily just as a commuter. I think like most people on the coast side, with the notable exceptions of those who live and work here, I think most of us live here and work somewhere else. So I commute into San Francisco. If I leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's a 45-minute commute. If I leave during rush hour, it's an hour and a half. It's a long commute either way. When we were raising our children out here, we needed to drop our kids off at the middle school and at the high school in Half Moon Bay. That added an hour and a half to go down to Half Moon Bay in that extraordinary traffic, an hour and a half to get that 8-mile stretch there and back before I started my own commute. I'm absolutely in favor of affordable housing. I'm very fortunate. My family's very fortunate. I currently have 2 unemployed kids who won't be able to afford to live in the coast side or in the Bay Area for that matter. So my heart goes out to all of those who are in this terrible situation. I just don't think this is the right spot. We should build this somewhere that's close to commuter centers, close to grocery stores, and other concerns were raised better by others before me. Thank you very much.
James Larimer, followed by William Huber.
My name is Jim Larmer. I'm very much in favor of this project. There's a housing crisis in America. There's a housing crisis in California. There's a housing crisis right here on the coast. We need this housing. Please build it.
Hi, my name is Bill Huber. I live in Moss Beach, in walking distance of this project. And I would like to express my strong support of this project. I think it's vitally necessary. We need the additional housing. A note about Mid-Penn. I do Meals on Wheels twice a week. I go through projects that are done by Mid-Penn that are exemplary how they're operated. It's just a joy to see the impact it's had on the people that live in that housing. The second thing is that this would be 71 families. It would have an impact on Fairlawn View, who's had declining enrollment. It would help that. But more importantly is where I live, it would be a joy for me to have to slow down, be very careful because somebody's taking their children to the park in Moss Beach, that they're taking their children to the Marine Reserve, or they're even walking down the street to go to the Coastside Market. That we deserve to have this housing, and it meets real needs for real people, just like Pillar Ridge, which is many times not conforming with many kinds of regulations, meets real needs for real people. Even Hilltop, which is below par housing, meets real needs for real people. And that's what this is really all about. And I ask you to use your intelligence, your abilities to make this happen. There is no perfect solution to any of these things, but this will have a major positive impact on our community and the needs of the people that work and live in this community. Thank you.
Nigel Taverner, followed by Brian Jessup.
Good evening, Commissioners and Planning Department. There was, you saw a timetable before, and I remember going to a meeting at El Granada Primary School in 2017, where it was discussed, this program was discussed and so on. It was quite a heated meeting, I must say. And I found my notes for it. And there were certain objections that were made to this particular proposal. And they were to do with traffic and the toxic stuff in the ground and so on, and also the parking and everything else. Now, reading through the report that came with the agenda and so on, excuse me, those appear to have all been addressed. And it's 7 years later. Now, and I went there to listen, and I thought, well, if we can solve all these things, wouldn't that be great? But what has changed is the number of people on the coast side still looking for somewhere to work. Rents have gone up by 50%, looking at my notes and comparing it with that. And I do have a vested interest here in that I am on the board of Sonrisa's Dental Health, the dental community here in town. And I can tell you, it's not just our patients that don't have somewhere to live. It's our dentists. It's our hygienists. It's the people that we trained up to be the dental assistants and now live in Arizona because they couldn't find anywhere to live here. And so my view on this is I would urge you to approve this particular proposal. And if you want to put one in El Granada as well, where I live, brilliant, because I'll tell you, there's all those people still looking for somewhere to work. And I don't think they're going to add to the traffic if they're going a short distance rather than driving over the hill or coming in from Daly City. Thank you. And thank you to the Planning Department for all their work.
Brian Jessup, followed by Carlisle and Young.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Jessup, and I'm a forager and a naturalist living in Montera. I'm here on behalf of the forest that needs to be cut down here. That's 160 significant-sized Monterey pine and Monterey cypress, both of which are native to California and support a native ecology at the site. I got involved in fighting this development about 4 years ago when I read Mid-Penn's vegetative assessment prepared by an environmental consultant that described this land as invasive grassland and that omitted any mention of most native plants. So I've documented the native ecology there and submitted it multiple times as part of this process. It doesn't seem like anybody's read that, so I'll just list some of the plants that I found here. Red flowering currant, Henderson's angelica, California coffeeberry, California mugwort, California blackberry, California bee plant, pink lady's tobacco, wood and beech strawberry, yerba buena, oso berry, Pacific sanicle, trillium yarrow, elderberry, sticky monkey flower. I've seen California red-legged frogs, dozens of species of native mushrooms or mycorrhizal with these trees. If you're saying the trees are non-native because they weren't there 100 years ago, then you're saying there isn't a single forest worth protecting on the California coast between San Francisco and Año Nuevo. That is true. Common sense says that these are California native trees because they support our native ecology, and that's obviously what we're trying to protect whenever we look at decisions like these. Now Mid-Penn is exempt from CEQA. That's the California Environmental Quality Act, exempt to bulldoze 160 trees, a native forest on the California coast a couple hundred yards from the ocean. I think everyone here understands the need for affordable housing and the housing crisis that we're in, but just because you're building affordable housing doesn't make it okay to destroy native wildlife. It's criminal to be paving over Monterey pine forest on the California coast. Maybe build on the existing grid or on eucalyptus next time, and you won't delay our much needed affordable housing by over a decade.
Sid, Carlisle and Young, followed by Rob C.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate affordable housing, and I have to agree with the last speaker that it's in a precarious location. The creek below in the deep, steep ravine is the Montera Creek. It's the watershed for most of Moss Beach and Montera, and it flows directly into the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. And at one point, Mid-Penn was going to pour all their stormwater in there. So now they're building 2 retention ponds, but I don't think they're going to be enough. When you guys held your planning meeting at the Half Moon Bay Library several years ago, then not Mayor Jimenez believed that that location was too remote, especially for farm workers that really need the housing. And our supervisor, Ray Mueller, if you maybe can still find his candidate page, he ran on a platform of affordable housing near transit. Well, I've got to tell you, I've lived in Moss Beach since 1988. It used to be 10 minutes by car to get to Half Moon Bay, and it certainly isn't anymore. I would like to mention that there is planned road improvements in 2030 by Caltrans. It's not funded yet, so we don't have a affordable bike path paid for or funded. We don't have any highway mitigation yet. So my thought would be it would be great if you guys could postpone approving this until they've got the infrastructure in place. But the lack of bike lanes or sidewalks and letting people drive, this is a car-dependent community, and it's due to poor bus service and no safe streets to schools and no school buses provided by Cabrillo Unified. So how are subsidized residents supposed to get their kids to school and from school safely, especially when Samtrans is so infrequent? Regular gas at the Moss Beach Chevron is $4.99 a gallon. This is for people that are going to be living there. How are they going to get back and forth if they don't have cars or can't afford to put gas in their car? Okay, I won't mention the stormwater runoff again, but there were very few EV chargers proposed for this site. 142 vehicles. I believe there were 5 proposed. That's not enough. And to date, there's no mid-coast emergency evacuation route or plan. And I think that it's completely irresponsible to start putting that many residents in harm's way where the tunnel is a choke point to get out of the coast side. So that's all I really have to say. And also, I am a senior. I am a lower income senior. I live on Social Security now, and I don't really appreciate being called a rich person just because I live in Moss Beach. Thank you.
Rob C., followed by Ken Chan.
Hello. The Mid-Penn Housing Corporation Cypress Point project proposed for Moss Beach will have specific adverse impact upon public health and safety that cannot be mitigated. Thus, the Housing Accountability Act, HHA Section 65589, provides that an agency may disapprove this housing development. The isolated location of the project will require far more automobile trips for services such as food, schools, medical, and employment in alternative locations. In addition, all wastewater must be pumped approximately 8 miles, again, far more than alternative locations. Therefore, this location will use much more energy and be responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than alternative sites, and thus has specific adverse impact upon the public health that cannot be mitigated. The adverse impact to traffic safety is obvious and well documented. For example, the Highway 1 and Carlos Street intersection has limited visibility and is dangerous. The large amount of additional traffic from the project would have specific adverse impact upon the public health and safety. The danger to automobile and pedestrian traffic cannot feasibly be mitigated without major updates to the roadway and construction of a pedestrian underpass under Highway 1. At least complete the County Moss Beach State Route 1 Congestion and Safety Improvements Project and the Connect the Coast Side along Carlos. Reference the March 11, 2024 letter from the MCC submitted to the Planning Commission for this meeting. This letter provides clear evidence that the project should not be exempt from the regular CEQA process. In the interest of protecting the environment and the health and safety of coastside residents and Highway 1 travelers, I request that the County of San Mateo not move forward with this project. I support affordable housing, but it should be built in an appropriate location, environmentally responsible, and safe for traffic and pedestrians.
Can I have 30 seconds? I'm going to read this. This is from another resident. Seton Hospital is now closed. It was, can I?
Is this somebody else you're speaking for now?
Yes. 30 seconds?
Well,
They didn't have time to get it in. I guess I don't either.
what's their name?
Greg, earlier. Greg Diegas? Right, anybody has a little chunk? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Ken Chan, followed by Ariana Santana.
Good evening, members of the San Mateo County Planning Commission. My name is Ken Chan, and I'm the senior organizer with the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County. We work with communities and their leaders to produce and preserve quality, affordable homes. I'd first like to thank staff for all their hard work in putting together their report on tonight's item. On behalf of HLC, I'd like to express our support for the Cypress Point Family Community proposal by Mid-Penn Housing that's before you tonight. I'd like to emphasize that for people, especially your community members, to be and to stay well, both physically and mentally, for your children to grow and to flourish, we need to ensure that all of us have housing that we can count on. A stable home anchors our health and provides the ladder for future success. Our children won't get very far if we don't plan for their housing needs and the needs of the people in our communities. The Cypress Point Family Community proposal can be a part of those plans, where of the 71 new affordable homes, 54 can be available for some of your most vulnerable coastside community members who have families. Given the lack of deed-restricted affordable homes for your residents in the Mid-Coast, you have the opportunity tonight to make a positive and historic impact on your community. How you choose to respond in this moment matters. We urge you to support Cypress Point and to move forward to your leaders on the Board of Soups for a decision. Thank you.
Ariana Santana, followed by Alan Hafner.
Good afternoon. My name is Ariana Santana, and I was born and raised here in Moss Beach, where I currently live with my family. My profession and personal life have given me firsthand knowledge of the hardships many families face as a result of rising rents and a shortage of affordable housing. I've seen family members forced to live in a single bedroom with their children or share a home with one or two other families because that's the best they can get in terms of affordability. Those who are privileged enough to own a home or afford to live here believe it easy to say, well, why don't they move if they can't afford to live here? And say so with the lack of consideration about the numerous reasons many families might choose not to do so, such as proximity to work and family, or the barriers they face that make it difficult to relocate. And around the room, I think it's safe to say there are some people here who have lived very privileged lives, unlike blue-collar, working-class, and impoverished families. As a long-life resident, it's difficult to imagine a future in which my family, or myself, won't be able to call this place home any longer. I don't want to continue seeing and hearing about families being forced out of the community they've grown to love because of the lack of affordable housing, and we as a community do nothing about it. As a Moss Beach resident, I support and urge for the development of the Cypress Point Affordable Housing Community Project. Thank you.
Alan Hafner, followed by Chris Johnson.
It works. Hi, my name's Alan. My family and I have lived on the coast since 1989, part of the Montero Moss Beach Water Improvement District and other groups. Anyway, it appears from the comments today that nobody's opposed to affordable housing on the coast, and nobody's opposed to having it in their neighborhood. But it appears that we're trying to fit a square project in a round hole. It just seems so many things that are not part of this site that would fit into the project. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is light pollution. We moved to the coast because it's quiet and it's dark and it's not San Bruno and it's not San Mateo and it's not Daly City. I'm happy to share all that we have on the coast with people of every economic ability and everybody who needs housing. But let's keep the coast and the community, the coast to look the way it always has. Deal with the earthquake area, deal with the water, deal with the light, deal with the traffic, and find a project that meets the needs of the people and also fits into the community.
Chris Johnson, followed by Dennis Shapsis.
Hello. I was on the MCC for 5 years. I was chair. February 10th, 2016, I invited Mid-Penn to come and make a presentation because I knew that this needed to get out in front of the community as quickly as possible. That was, what, 7 years ago? I was also 10 years on the Coastside Design Review Committee as the El Granada Community Representative, so I've been through a lot of these things, and I would say this, Mid-Penn is an incredible organization. This is an incredible project, as Ed Love said. Ed Love, who I had many projects come before me. I agree with him. It's an incredible project, and it will be great for the people that live there. And I say to the county, let's go ahead and build it. But I've followed the objections, and they're all real. But it doesn't really matter. This is a very cynical comment, by the way, so just be ready. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter what I say. Not a word that has been said here is going to change any of your minds or where the county's position is. And because I've been through these before, whether it's Big Wave or other projects, CEQA doesn't matter, mitigation, neg deck. It's already been documented, things that apply, that don't apply, those things don't matter. So I would ask the county, let's go ahead and build this thing. People need housing. That's a true thing. These people need housing. Let's build it. But let's put that bike path in that goes, that goes from Moon Ridge to Montera. Let's put those safe crossings in that we've been trying to get for 15 years. Do we have one? Do we have a safe crossing? No, we have some white painted lines in Moss Beach that are not permitted and not real. But we don't have those other things. Do we have a community center in the Mid-Coast? No. Is the coastal trail falling apart? Yes. So let's build this thing, and also concurrently, can the county walk and chew gum at the same time? Can we build this project, and can we get these other things that are quite necessary for life on the coast side for both the people that currently live in housing and the people that are going to live in this Mid-Penn housing, because it's going to happen. It is happening. And it's a good thing. But, Steve, there needs to be more work on the county on the other things that the county needs. And I hear you, Lisa. This traffic mitigation, these bike paths, these are imaginary things that do not exist. They're not funded, and I've been waiting years for them. They will never exist. So this is an incredible project.
Dennis Shapsis, followed by Gabriela Marquina Flores.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in public housing from Brooklyn, New York. So I know what it's like to live in public housing. It's a big difference, obviously, now than when I was a kid. But I got into a lot of problems when I was a kid. Because my mom and dad and all my friends, they weren't around. So there was no supervision. So my concerns is that you have a development here. Who's going to supervise the kids if both parents are working? Just from my own personal experience. I also boarded the project. I have 2 homes on 16th Street, which is really fine. And to be honest with you, that street is so dangerous going to the highway. The gentleman just spoke. If I want to walk, I like to walk to the post office. You take your life in your hands. I mean, I encourage you to actually walk along the highway there. You see the cars coming at you. It's really not safe. It's got to be a safe place for our kids. And to go ahead and build something which is fine, but not to have any safe way to exit it and enter it makes no sense to me. It should be done at the same time. Oh, sorry about that. That's pretty much it, basically. I just wanted to mention that.
Gabriela Marquina Flores, I believe is a Spanish speaker. Gabriela, ¿gustarías hacer tu comentario ahora? speaker. Edgar Adriana Acevedo Rodríguez, also a Spanish speaker. ¿Gustaría hacer su comentario ahora? Alicia Rodríguez Corrales, Spanish speaker, ¿gustaría hacer su comentario ahora? Karina Rodríguez, ¿gustaría hacer su comentario ahora? And Marcos Áviles Solano. So all these names that we are calling were Spanish speakers and they were all in support of the project. And the next one was Mirna Millán Arroyo. Okay, so I will now call on Scott Graham, followed by Jean Knight.
Hi, I got it. I'm a long-term resident of Moss Beach. I own a small farm in Half Moon Bay. A lot of things to cover here. Mid-Penn is obviously they've accomplished a lot of good things, but the bottom line is this is a nice design in the wrong area. That has to be clear. This is not about farm worker housing. This is not, somehow that has, initially when this project was brought up, that was not even in the discussion. And I know, I own a farm, I work with farm workers, and they want respect. They don't want a free house. They don't want a free car. They want a job. They want to earn respect. And so there's a big difference in philosophy here. And the project, even the fire department, I live on Stetson Street, right? I've lived there 32 years. Imagine you raise your family on Stetson Street or Sierra Street or Carlos, and you raise your children, and now 300, 400 people are going to move into your neighborhood. How would you feel? How would you feel? The road is a one-lane road. Carlos Street is basically a little over a 1.5-lane road. The fire department cannot even get out of there safely sometimes. There's accidents all the time, even the man on 16th Street, and it's crazy. So this is not about whether you want farm workers to have housing. Sure, I'd love everybody to have a house. I'd love everybody to have a Tesla and an iPhone. But this is not a perfect world. This project does not fit because of the traffic. It doesn't have the water. In 1987, when I first out, there's a moratorium on water. Now, all of a sudden, they have water. So the problem is clearly the traffic.
Can you please wrap it up?
So all I can say is, and AB 1449 is like an end around to get around the environmental issues in this, and that is clearly wrong. AB 1449 is wrong, and you should acknowledge that.
Oh, your time is up.
Walt Van Hoffy, he's going to take back his 2 minutes to speak, and then followed by Jean Knight.
Good evening. This is the second kind of a session that we're having here after a certain amount of time, commissioners. And the thing that sort of baffles me is the fact that so much is being discussed about the traffic problems and the mitigation. So why isn't Caltrans here to answer questions for us concerning all the traffic problems that we're discussing and looking forward to try to mitigate? I'd like to have an answer from the commissioners, please, why Caltrans is not involved.
Jean Knight, followed by Jose Domingo Lopez.
Commissioners, County, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm an 18-year coastside resident. I'm speaking in support of this project. Most people have already covered the points that I wanted to make, so I'll just summarize that we have an immediate public health and safety issue right now, and it regards multiple families having to live in one home with, in many cases, one family living in one room. That's a very real public health and safety issue. It's affecting children's health, it's affecting the health of the parents, it's affecting definitely the mental health and their educational progress. We also have issues with this site that people have spoken of. However, those issues are actually inherent to every place on the coast. I don't know if, I live in El Granada. We talked about a 17% grade on this hill. I live on a 20% grade. We have lots of blind curves. It's our geographic location. It's the geology of this area. We have issues that are particularly difficult, and I do urge the county to address the traffic issues related to the safety. However, the traffic, in terms of increasing traffic, these are all residents of the coast already. They already are part of the traffic in this area. I don't see how that's going to substantially impact the overall evacuation or anything related to the traffic load on our streets, since these are residents who are already here. So thank you.
And this is the last call for speakers' requests. If you would like to make your comment, please submit your slip to staff in the next 2 minutes. Jose Domingo Lopez, he was also a Spanish speaker in support of the project, but it seems that that group has headed out. So I will call on Carl May, followed by Mark Din.
Carl May, a resident of Montera from 1974 to 1984, and since 1984, a resident of the neighborhood that this project will negatively impact. First, I'd like to question the word community. This project is 6.5 miles from Half Moon Bay. It is a community, but the mid-coast communities, our several towns, are very distinct from Half Moon Bay. I don't care what Half Moon Bay people think. How dare they try to unload their problems on us? AB 1449 that clearly does not apply to this. And I urge you to take a look at the exact wording of that. This is another urban mindset kind of thing that's been foisted on all of California by urban people, especially located in San Francisco, who have no compassion or experience with what they're talking about. SB 9 was another one. They clearly don't know about places like this. So, aside from the geographic challenge that people seem to face in not understanding that we are not part of Half Moon Bay, there's also a numeric challenge, or a numerical challenge. Please look at the numbers of cars, look at the sizes of the roads, look at the traffic numbers. None of those are going to get better with this. Please look at where people who live here, or who would live in this project, now live. They're not being forced out of any kind of housing. They aren't there. But a number of us on fixed incomes, retired, and so forth, are living in this neighborhood. Finally, I would ask that you consider that this has been loaded into our LCP since the very first LCP. There were 3 projects like this, one at the Cypress, what's now being called Cypress Point, one at the south end of Moss Beach that started up and then failed for lack of financing, a Kaufman and Broad project a few years back, and one at the north end of El Granada. That LCP had no input from coastside residents. It had no input from those of us who lived here and who depend on these communities. That's a real shame. There were very good people involved in creating these LCPs, but they weren't locally informed. Thank you.
So we now have only 3 speakers left, and that is Mark Din, followed by Sandra Barosio.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mark Din. I'm on the Coastside Design Review Committee, and I am an employee of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, but I'm here as a resident of Moss Beach. Carlos, I think I worked with you at Goodwill a long time ago. Yeah, I've been a resident of Moss Beach on Stetson Street for about 2 years now. So I think I have about 28 years before I can consider myself a resident. Anyhow, yeah, I just was a little bit maybe concerned about the staff report that mentioned the design review findings. I just wanted to point out that there was a number of community concerns that were brought forth, which a lot of you have reiterated here. Similar to Chris, who mentioned, just this project going to go through, I very much feel that, what we should focus on is looking at the mitigation measures to, help the impact when it comes to safety, traffic, and the environment. And so, there's a Moss Beach Caltrans congestion project that's underway. It's in PAED, which, in my role at MTC means that it's a long way from coming. So I would strongly urge the Commission and others to accelerate these projects that can help mitigate the impacts of adding 71 units. I do want to acknowledge the fact that this project originally was 148 units and was reduced down to 71. And when I looked at the density in my own analysis, that's the density of the community in Moss Beach. When you look at the units per acre. So yeah, I just really strongly urge you to look at accelerating a lot of the projects that could help, integrate this project into the community. Thank you.
Sandra Barosio, followed by our last speaker, Dan Haggerty.
Thank you, and thank you for holding this forum. I'm not against housing. I came from a homeless family of 10. When we were given a small little trailer, it was right next to my father's work site. We were very blessed to have this trailer. First of all, we were placed in safety. Our little trailer was not at risk at blowing up the pipes from too much pressure. Our little trailer was not going to never did have any sewage flowing out of the toilets from lack of infrastructure. We didn't fear walking to school. The school was 2 blocks away. Mama would go to the grocery store on foot and come home with our supplies. Papa had a designated little road for the trailer, for the people that lived on the trailer in a community. We had a library, we had a clinic, we had high school. I went to school. How many of these kids can do the same? I'm not against housing. I want housing for everyone. But first, safety. Safety like I had safety, like my family had safety, like my padres had safety. As a matter of fact, I was thinking while I was sitting here, Mid-Penn, I know they care about housing. I know they do. They have a lot of beautiful projects. How about they take the $18 million rewarded to them by the state and distribute it among the people that need rental assistance or housing assistance in our community? The money's already there. Use it for the people that are sitting right here. La gente que necesita dinero para sus casas can have mid-pen money. It's the right thing to do. It's tax money. It's your money. It's my money. It's everybody's money. House. And by the way, help them pay for the post office box, which costs a lot of money to rent every year. Thank you.
And we will now call on our last speaker, Dan Haggerty.
Good evening, everyone. I question the whole framework of this project. I feel that it's likely that the low-income speakers were given false hopes. I just honestly, the way I see it, I just honestly believe that this project is about profit. Yes, MidPen is a nonprofit managing company, but the investors that are putting the money in ultimately will be the owners, are interested in profits over the years. So the deed restrictions, I believe, will be likely very difficult to enforce in the long run. There'll be all kinds of interest to keep the property as crowded as possible. The issues of the location, the traffic impacts, the overflow parking that will ultimately flow into the remaining surrounding neighborhoods, et cetera. So yeah, MidPen will be the managing partner, but you know ultimately the owners, you know, over time may not keep it in best repair. This community is often exposed to mold, and you know we don't know how this property will look in 10 years, and we don't know truly. You know, ultimately, this project is just a poor location. It could be planned better, in my humble opinion, and allowing it to move forward as planned is essentially creating a situation, and it's going to deteriorate what we have in this area. I think a better plan can be created, and I hope that that happens. Thank you.
And with that, Madam Chair, there are no more speakers for item 2.
Thank you. Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Oh, thank you all for coming and speaking to us. And no? What happened? Thanks everybody for coming and speaking to us and for being respectful and all that. Great, thank you. And public comment is now closed. And does the director have anything to add to the answers or?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too would like to express my thanks to all the participants today. I will not attempt to address all the comments you received, but I will just try and bring it home for the commissioners. You have permit applications in front of you that have specific standards of review set by our local coastal program and our zoning regulations and our grading regulations. And our recommendation to the Board of Supervisors should be based on whether or not the project complies with those specific policies and regulations. Should you have any questions about or concerns about the project's compliance with the relevant policies and regulations, I'd be more than happy to respond to those. And that concludes my remarks, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Steve? Question for Steve?
Steve, would you be so kind to answer the Caltrans question?
Certainly. So, this commission knows, and many of the members of the public know, the county has been very involved in working with Caltrans to move forward some improvements that we believe are long overdue that are needed to serve the community. And we're committed to seeing that effort through. The current status of those efforts are that they really have fallen upon the county to address. We've asked continuously for Caltrans to take a more in-depth look at some of the issues that we're facing on the coastside. And in some instances, they've agreed. For example, with regard to the safety concerns at the intersection of Carlos and Highway 1, we continue to communicate with Caltrans about that concern, and they have agreed to undertake a speed study to determine whether or not a reduction in the speeds is warranted in order to minimize that safety hazard. But at the end of the day, the long-term improvements that are envisioned by Connect the Coastside and the Moss Beach State Route 1 project, those are all being led by the county. And we have been lucky to secure funding from the Transportation Authority of San Mateo County. We have secured Caltrans' involvement in the review and development of these plans. And they will continue to be advisory, and they will continue to be a regulatory agency that we're going to need to deal with. But the project lead is the county, and we're committed to seeing those through and working with Caltrans to address any issues that they may have that would get in the way of us fulfilling that commitment.
One more question along the same lines, Steve, is does Connect the Coast Side have any improvements along this particular neighborhood?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a number of improvements that were suggested by Connect the Coastside that the county is actively working to implement. They include intersection improvements at California in Highway 1, at the intersection of Carlos Street, Highway 1 and 16th, as well as implementing the California Coastal Trail along Carlos Street. So the county is, as I said, committed to carrying those improvements through, and this project is going to contribute a fair share proportion to the completion of those improvements.
And is any of that funded by MidPen?
So MidPen is required to contribute a fair share contribution. The exact amount of that contribution still needs to be determined. It will need to be submitted to the county before we issue the building permits for construction.
Thank you. Who would like to start the deliberation here? Me?
Well, I'll start with some stuff. Let me add on to what Steve was saying about the transportation items. So the count, because I've been involved in these studies since 2009, the county's focused on making good progress on the Moss Beach transportation infrastructure improvements in the vicinity of the project. Long-term planning began with the Safety and Mobility Study 2010 to 2012, and Connect the Coastside was adopted in 2022. These were planning efforts. And the Moss Beach Corridor Study began in 2022 and has now entered phase 2. This is just for Moss Beach and focused largely on this segment here. The estimated completion of these projects in 2030, this, to me, having been involved in all this, feels like the home stretch.
And the key piece for me in regard to Cypress Point was the shift away from, in the neg deck, or in the EIR, they were saying temporarily closing Carlos intersection. Now this is shifted to working on near-term safety improvements the county can get done with Caltrans help for that intersection at Carlos, and to focus on actively planning for Carlos Street as a long-planned bike pedestrian route east of Highway 1, and at least as the bike ped connection with Cypress Point, and for everybody. This is something we've been waiting for a long time, and I'm confident that these transportation improvements will happen and we will all benefit. There may be a gap between when the project is finished and these construction's finally done, but with these short-term safety improvements and the importance of getting this housing. I mean, we just had, more than 3 years of a detour for the Murata Road Bridge, and we all survived. Anyhow, let me stop for now and see if anyone else wants to. Go ahead.
I'm a fifth generation Bay Area. My family came here the old-fashioned way, illegally. We snuck in to California in the 1860s, including one grandfather deserted off an Imperial German ship at the harbor and deserted. But we come here a lot of different ways. The house I grew up in San Mateo, I left Half Moon Bay and bought it for my parents in '81. I've watched my neighborhood go from single-family homes to now a minimum of 2 homes on every lot because of ADUs, all those things. There's a family down the street. They've got 9 cars. 9 cars. When you showed your picture of the street where you go down and you have to worry about garbage, my street is so narrow that we have to take everybody on the north side off tomorrow, Thursdays, so that the garbage truck can get down when they're parked. Otherwise, you can't drive down the street. The world I grew up is gone. The world what we live in today is gone. And we're desperate. Not an ideal place. No, absolutely not. Transportation on the coast side was always bad and not any better. But it doesn't mean things will stop as they are. And having lived in farm housing and living in places like that, you will have it in your neighborhood of whether we provide the housing or we don't provide the housing, and we should provide the housing. We all seem to be in agreement with that. And so I'm going to support this because 71 families won't be living densely. That are already in our neighborhoods, who already are the traffic. And we are the problem. It is us who are using the roads. We're not sitting here making sure that we have a bus that runs more than once an hour. There are ways of doing this, and we have to do the housing whether we like it or not, and we have to do the mitigation behind. We're supposed to be planning and doing it in front, but we don't do this. We do it behind for some reason. But we're desperate, and I will be supporting this.
concerns of the community are very, loud and clear. I read everybody's concerns and complaints, everybody's letters to the T. Heard everybody speak tonight, as well as I feel that not the intrusion, but also the risk to the area, loud and clear. I hear that. It's a very difficult decision for us, but I too support the project, all the due diligence that occurred over the past 10 years, roughly. And so the community and also the workers are really need a place to stay nearby where they work, especially the farm workers. So I support the program.
I really appreciate all of you coming out and speaking your mind, but let me just tell you, you are not alone. This is happening throughout our state, if it makes you feel any better. Okay? Okay. If we don't do it ourselves, it will happen. And we will not have a say in it. So we will never find the perfect spot, but I think this is a good spot where, okay?
Quiet, please.
This is a good site, and Mid-Penn, as well as our county and our staff, has done a great job at reducing it from 148 units down to 71 affordable housing, and I fully support that. And I think there are some shortcomings, but with the we heard that we will in time have the commercialization as well as the necessities for the families who move in to these 71 homes. It will take time. We have to start somewhere, and those things will happen. So I am in total support of this project.
How about this? All right. I fully support this project, and here's why. The legitimate concerns in the draft EIR have been addressed adequately in the conditions of approval. I don't know if you've all read them in detail, but I certainly have. I've attended every meeting since 2016, and I've listened to what everybody had to say, and I read all the correspondence. I was on the Mid-Coast Council when MCC first hosted Mid-Penn. Anyway, I like that the development will occur in the most degraded area of the site, that the units clustered in order to maximize natural open space on the site with trails open to the public, that these pollutants, the endless dumping, that all this will be cleaned up, finally. And then, okay, at the 2016 MCC meeting, when Mid-Penn Housing first spoke to the community about their idea for this Moss Beach site, there was resistance from the neighbors. One woman shared her heartfelt feelings about her neighborhood, how people out walking will smile and say hello to the neighbors they meet. She felt the special close-knit feeling would be lost, and that this new influx of neighbors would somehow be excluded. This struck me to the heart. I will never forget it, because I live at Pillar Ridge, and we too smile and say hello to our neighbors when walking in our streets. We are all human. So are we ready for a motion?
I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the general plan land use map amendment, the coastal development permit, design review permit, and the grading permit, county file number PLN 2022-220, by adopting the required findings and conditions of approval contained in the attachment A.
I second.
That was a motion by Commissioner Hanson and a second by Commissioner Gupta. Commissioner Gupta?
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson?
Aye.
Commissioner Serrano Kwan? Chair Ketchum?
Aye.
Thank you, Chair. Motion carries.
Thank you, everybody. I just wanted to say that I hope you can open your hearts and welcome your new neighbors to your community. Smile and say hello to them in the street. It's just a shame to ruin this now, isn't it? Okay.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. So that concludes item 2. With regard to the other items on the agenda, I don't have any urgent matters to update you for the director's report. So in the interest of time, I will table those matters and welcome an adjournment if that's the pleasure of the chair. So adjourned. Thank you.